And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Brad Warren. This is Julia Tinson, who's the daughter of one of our founding board members who served with us for 30 years. We lost Thane a couple years ago. And Julia is really a wonderful legacy carrier. I am so grateful, first of all, to still be connected, and second of all, for her being here doing this. I won't go into the full detail, but her dad was like an older brother to me, and to me, she's family. It is just so wonderful to get to do this with her.
Well, and this guy gave me the bed last night in the house we rented and slept on the floor. I'm like, okay, and then woke up 6 hours later to prep for this presentation and show up and be the amazing human that you are. To end our night last night on music and storytelling and like poetry all in the same breath, and then to present really informative information that we all need to know that helps us make better choices so that we can preserve the resources that we all love and care about and need to keep our future going.
Did you just introduce every time we do a presentation?
Yes.
We're going to do something I haven't done here before, which is a survey to kind of set the table for how we think about where the lever points are and what people understand about a situation we all face right now. Just for context, in Washington State, in 2021, a law passed that we had worked on very hard for a long time, and we got most of what we wanted, but not everything, and it has flaws, to be honest. And there is an effort to repeal it underway right now. And I think the effort to repeal it is misguided and destructive. This is the Climate Commitment Act. It is the strongest climate law in the world right now. It is extremely useful for dealing with ocean acidification and for the climate effects of the ocean. On the other hand, it has some problems. The way it's been implemented is not fair nor intelligent. It creates people who hate it. It's just a clumsy implementation. So what we want to understand is what already is circulating in terms of messages that people have absorbed and believe. So I'm going to start with a question that's here up on the screen, and Julia's going to make notes and try to get everybody down. We have, and we'll pass around a sign-up sheet. If you would like to see the results of the survey, we will sort of compress it all and analyze it and share it out. So you can get that by just giving us your contact information as soon as I can find out the sheet.
I got it.
You have it.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So afterwards, right?
Yes, we'll do it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the first question is, do you work in fishing? And so we'll pause for a minute, and I guess maybe raise your hands.
Yeah.
So wait, Brett, you might want to put it start slideshow.
Well, it's not a slideshow.
It's
Oh,
not.
I
It's
see, okay.
just a Word document right
Okay,
now.
got it.
Yeah. So we can't do a slideshow per se. It's a little clumsy.
Got it, I understand,
Yeah.
I understand.
Do you or have you in the past worked in fishing?
Show
Is the
hands.
question. Yeah. So there's a hand. There's a hand. There's a hand. We have 3. Are there any more? Is it 4 or 5? Or
I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right. So some, and then next question. What have you heard about Washington's cap and invest climate law? A, that it makes gas more expensive. B, that it has no effect, but oil companies have just taken advantage to raise prices.
A.
You've heard A.
So if you've heard A, maybe raise your hand.
Yeah.
That it's just got no.
I heard A before the bill was ever passed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody else who's heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay. Only 2 of you have heard that it makes gas more expensive. Has anyone heard the other argument that it's that the oil companies took advantage of it and raised prices and stuck it to the climate people for doing it? One person has heard that one. Okay.
How many of you just like maybe haven't heard anything about this? Okay.
Wow, that's important. That's a
Yeah.
lot of hands. Can you keep your hands up?
Yeah.
1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6,
Well, if
7,
I'm
8,
doing the
9,
math right,
10,
I'll just
11,
take
12.
28 of you that are in the room and subtract 3, so 25 actually, just maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many
Great.
people live in Oregon? Because, again, it's a Washington
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, it is a Washington question, although it's up and live in Oregon with separate debates about the same stuff. But you're right. I meant to ask that question, and we had it in a form that we removed from this because we were trying to keep it short. So would you ask that again?
How many people live in Oregon?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17,
Gotcha.
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So most people do it, like 24
Yeah.
out of the room. If you are involved in fishing or have been, and we'll have questions like this for those of you who aren't involved in fishing. How big of an expense is fuel as a share of your operating expenses? Is it your largest expense? Is it just one of the top 5? You don't know? Or is it sort of insignificant? Let's go with largest for a minute.
And there's only 3 folks, right, who's shared that maybe they're in fishing, so maybe you just want to like vocalize
Yeah,
what your response might be.
yeah.
B.
B. One of the top 5.
Okay.
Okay. So 2 of our 3 have said that. Any others? Is it? There were as many as 4 or 5, maybe. Okay. All right. So that's good. If you take just your household, whether you're in Oregon or Washington, what share of your annual energy spending comes from gas or diesel, or both? Transportation is your annual energy spend.
Including airplanes?
Sorry?
Including airplanes.
You could say the fuel for airplanes too. That'd be okay.
That would be mine.
Yeah. And then the questions are A, largest of your energy expenses is transportation fuel. B, it's one of the top 5. C, don't know. D, insignificant. Don't know.
You said D.
So yeah, D is insignificant. So we have 1 where it's insignificant.
No, 2.
2. Okay.
I just got 100 electric cars.
Yeah.
3.
But
So
not
3.
for gas, for heat.
3 for whom it's insignificant then? Okay. Then how many is it the largest of your component of your energy bill? 1, 2, 3. I'm guessing you might be in that group. 3 to 5. Sorry?
Top 5, maybe.
Top 5, okay. All right. How about top 5? That's a lot of people. Let's see. Hold those hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. And then, what kind of vehicle do you drive? Gas or diesel or electric? So your hand went up on gas or diesel.
Gas, diesel, raise hands.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Okay.
And so that tells us a lot. Are electric vehicles affordable to you? A, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Were you counted before?
No.
Okay, 7. Then B, they're not, but they're getting close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
I just got one for the price of the tax rebate, so that was really affordable.
Nice. So that's a yes. That's number. That's.
I mean, with the trade-in,
Yeah. So C,
is yes.
the answer is yes. So let's see
Chevy
how many are yeses. Affordability is not an issue. They're affordable. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wait, that was a fixed question. Affordability is not a question.
Yeah, if for you they're affordable. The reasons you might not have one might be other reasons. But if 1, 2, let's see, hands up for those who say they're affordable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. Are they practical for you? Is an electric vehicle practical for you? Yes. And then we'll go to no. Yes first. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
It's a half.
10 and a half, 11 and a half, 12 and a half, 13 and a half. All right. If they're not practical, and it wouldn't go to yes, sorry, we go to yes. Are they practical? And the answer yes. How many would answer actually yes?
We just did.
When you started, you got it.
We just did that.
Yes, yes.
We got to, yeah, we got to 10 and a half on the no.
No, that was
Yes.
yes. 10 half on the yes.
You
Okay.
asked backwards.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, forgive me. I asked backwards. So then let's go to no. How many are? They're just not. They're not practical.
Well, then I can just subtract too.
Okay, we'll move forward.
Yeah, let's do that.
But everyone might be in that camp. Some might be in the maybe or don't know.
What about, it would work great, but my wife disagrees with the politics of the president of the company who makes them.
He is an obnoxious.
There are more companies than him that make them. Chevy makes some great EVs.
But that's a good point too.
That's the affordable, I can't afford Tesla, but I can.
Same.
Oh,
There's other
Okay.
issues too,
Yeah.
though. I mean,
So if they're not practical for you, here we're trying to get at why. 1, not enough range. That's A. Not enough range. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so we're at 6. I think, yes, 7 because it comes down from 8. I guess where we are. Not enough range. 2, or B, unreliable charging network. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
Do you get to vote for more than one thing?
You can.
All your fears
You
about
can.
electric vehicles get to get double digits.
I
Double dipping on the.
I think it's allowed because
Okay.
if people have more than
You're
one
right,
reason.
You're right.
I mean, I have one, and I have many caveats
Yeah,
about it.
okay.
I'm going to leave
You
out
can
too
put
expensive.
batteries on there. A lot of people complain about the batteries.
Right. And a fourth objection I've heard from some people is that it can't haul the stuff I need to haul. So that's in here. It's number. It's item D. Is it? Are electric vehicles impractical for you because they can't haul what you need to haul?
I think there's another thing that you're not asking, though, is how good they are for the environment.
Yeah.
And by this, I mean, to buy a new vehicle, whatever it is, there's an enormous amount of energy and resources that goes into making it.
Yes.
And if you have, in my case, I have an older car, and just, it uses gas, but just to keep it on the road is more fuel, it uses less energy than me buying the next new thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's an environmental concern of
It's a
mine.
legitimate point,
Well, and a lot of people say the batteries are just as bad. I would put that down.
right?
Yeah, I took your notes,
Yep.
Ken.
Yeah, but these are really legitimate points. Have you ever used biofuel or renewable fuel in your vehicle or your boat? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Do you know where to buy cleaner fuels if you want to for your vehicle? Hands up if the answer is no. Are you a no? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Brad, are you also?
No, I know where to get it.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Don't know where to get the fuel. I'm just going to call that good. That's an answer to that question. There is a synthetic and renewable fuel being made that has basically identical molecular structure to diesel or gas. If you could buy that at the same price as regular fuel, would you?
What's it made out of?
I will get to that. Go ahead.
I haven't seen it.
Right. Neither have I. But it's okay.
If you could, would you? Is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right. If you could, would you? That's right. And so let's see hands on that. If you could, would you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. And as to what it's made of, the ones I know about, they pull carbon from the air using carbon removal methods, and then they combine it with renewably produced hydrogen extracted from cracking water, and that you assemble the hydrocarbon molecule from scratch.
Okay, then we could add the.
Okay, we have one more item.
I thought it was like making corn or something that you can use to feed.
No, biofuels I think are a more complicated matter. The making of synthetic renewable fuels is looking really interesting to me, and there is a plan underway, under development, for Washington State to become a major producer of synthetic renewable fuels. And a lot of people think it's a good idea among energy nerds, but nobody knows about it. So it's an interesting question whether anybody cares. You know, it's part of why we wanted to ask these questions, is to sort out, are we solving problems that nobody cares about, or is this going to go somewhere? If people knew about it, it would actually be useful. So thank you. That sort of settles that part of it. And we have a few minutes, and in 5 minutes we're going to hand things over to Casey, who's going to talk about a completely different subject, which is really, don't cage our oceans work. But you had your hand up.
I was just going to say, it takes an enormous amount of energy to reduce carbon dioxide to carbon.
Yes,
And it
that's
takes
a
an enormous
legitimate
amount
point.
of energy to split water,
Yes,
because you're reassembling a fuel that's been oxidized.
right.
And
So
when
you
you
want to deoxidize the stuff that you've already burned.
when you burn the hydrocarbon, you're producing CO2 again.
Yes.
So
And what you get in the end is a
where do
fuel
you get
that's
the energy? The only thing that actually makes that energy is the sun working through photosynthesis. There's no chemical process to do it.
right. In order to get it to be as decarbonized as it can be, that fuel has to be produced using renewable energy. Thankfully, right now, so is the cheapest power you can get. So it's conceivable, but you have to do it in a way it doesn't raid our scarce water supplies. So you've essentially got to use salinated water to do it, and probably salinated groundwater is preferable. There are some constraints, and it could be that it scales only so much. But
I apologize if you mentioned this, but I always respect Brad's opinion. What's your take on this offshore wind and whether or not fishermen should be terrified of it as the locals are?
I know a lot of people who have been adamant, hard over against it, and I'll be honest, they came by that for good reason. They were treated dishonestly. The advocates of wind were not straight with them. The field has been advanced by people who are thinking my way or the highway, and if you want to make enemies, do that. Whatever merits the idea has, and I think there might be some in the long run, we're going to have to wait and see if it can become cheap enough to be a competitive producer of power that people can afford. Right now, it's averaging around 5 times, for the most part, the going rate for the power we buy. And if you look at the cheapest out there, it's around twice. If they can make it at the kind of rate terrestrial renewables are made at, it gets a whole lot of my objections to it go away. But right now, I used to run fishing magazines. I look at how much it costs to run anything on the ocean. You know, we did a survey of our readers one time and found out how much they were spending on boat repairs. And it was gobsmacking. And the numbers are just as gobsmacking today. And if you look at what it costs to maintain anything that has to work in this hostile, corrosive, high energy, difficult environment called the ocean, including fishermen. The healthcare bills and the maintenance bills are not cheap. And if we look at offshore wind, it's a good idea that doesn't pencil yet. And the notion that they're going to enjoy the benefits of Moore's Law to get cheap the way solar has does not seem realistic given how inherently expensive and difficult the environment they're working in is. They might get there. They're smart. They're going to have to play straight, and they're going to have to be good at cutting their numbers down. And if they get across that hurdle, which they're not even close to doing now, that industry is going, it's falling apart. The best thing that I can say for my fishermen friends who are afraid of it right now is that the industry is falling apart for economic reasons. In fact, to call it an industry is a little bit of a puff job because it's not an industry. It is a subsidy enterprise, and there are many of those. It's not the only one. We subsidize fossil fuels globally to the tune of, I think it's trillions of dollars. We subsidize all kinds of things, but most of those things don't require quite so much.
So the BOEM was just crooked and wants a subsidy enterprise, is that right?
No, it's more than BOEM. BOEM is problematic for another reason. The ocean is a public trust resource. We own it. It doesn't belong to whoever is out there using it. It doesn't belong to the fishermen. It doesn't belong to the oil companies who drill there. It doesn't belong to the users. It belongs to the public. And as the public and the users, we owe it to ourselves, the planet, and each other to make sure that it's governed in a way that's inclusive and gives people a voice in the world they're going to have to live with. And if you look at whether BOEM is equipped to do that as a matter of statute, it's not. It's not set up to be able to do a consultative governance process. It's set up to run top-down governance processes that, are run out of DC. Most federal agencies are. I would say that National Marine Fisheries Service is pretty much unique in having the council system with a regional governance structure that allows people on the ground to be part of the government they live with. And that's actually a model worth looking at. If we're going to do new kinds of development in the ocean, we better work out governance systems that learn something from fish. And the idea that you have to learn something from fish is an insult to people who think they're smarter than fishermen. But it's just the truth. For once, you got to listen to the guy in the gumboots. That's kind of my take there. There's a governance problem. It's independent from all the other aspects, and there's an economics problem. And then there's a problem of just being too bullheaded to listen. And those things have to be worked out, or it's not going to go anywhere. It is falling on its lips now. If you're scared of it, look at how they're falling apart, and decide whether you need to be scared of people who can't keep themselves from dissolving. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here because I'm interested in offshore wind, and I'm a retired person from, I used to work for the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission that regulates the people that supply power.
Yeah.
Before that, I worked for the Department of Ecology for 17 years. So
Yeah.
I'm here just because I think it's more likely than not to happen. And it needs to be done right. The approach has been wrong for many, many years as far as doing it. And I'd be happy to chat with anybody afterwards about this.
I agree, some of it is happening and will happen. but not nearly the 30 gigawatts by 2030 that's dreamed of.
That's a bit ambitious.
Yeah.
I agree.
That ambition is dead. And I think for the moment, for good reason, if they can solve these other problems, maybe they'll merit that kind of scale. But I don't see it now.
One thing that it provides is that because the energy resource is so huge offshore versus onshore, that in the same space you can get so much more energy that there's not a lot of other things that are actually commercially viable now of that scale that don't have other problems, whether it's fossil fuels or nuclear or solar. There's other problems, and that's one of the reasons why I'm continuing to track it and be interested in it.
Right. No, you raise a good point.
Well, the question will be,
It's a legitimate point raised by folks who believe in it, is that where else are you going to get the power?
Yeah.
do we have the science to know if it's compatible with fisheries though? Or is it gonna be the next hydroelectric nightmare?
Right.
Do we know? Do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
I'd be happy to. I know a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think, where it's placed, I think, is of key importance to the
Yeah.
fisheries.
Right.
Where is it in the way of a lot of stuff, or essentially it's minimizing any impact and maximizing all
Right.
the benefits, and that has to be done, like you said, not with a Bowen process, but a little bit more broad and from the bottom up.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
Sure.
I want to emphasize that point. We have a pretty good ocean governance system. It's called the Fishery Management Councils. We should learn from them instead of ignoring them. They're not perfect. They're way not perfect, but there's nothing comparable in our governance system nationally. And we might find them a useful model to learn from. I'm going to say it's time for us to hand it over. We're eating into Casey's minutes. Thank you for your interest and engagement in this. Keep going. We will circle around if you sign up, we will circle back with the results of this little survey. And we will also share with you what we're putting together as we go forward into the next chapter, which is to figure out, and we're still figuring this out, how are we going to engage in this question? It's going to be up in Washington, and a variant of it will be up in Oregon too, about whether these states are going to keep the climate policies they've developed or gut them. And frankly, we hope they can keep them. But if they're going to be run by people in a too boneheaded way, it's going to be very difficult to keep them. I'm deeply concerned that many of the climate advocates I've worked with over the years have bones instead of brains. Especially the way they respond to the rural, resource-dependent, fishery-dependent people. These are states where the rural component of the state has a lot of power at the ballot box. And if you don't listen, you're going to get what you can expect. And we are very much at risk of that. So thank you. Here's Casey Willson from Don't Change Our Oceans.
Do you have any interest on getting on the mailing list for Global Ocean Health with Brad, or just getting information from today's survey, please?
Yeah, in fact, we'll pass this around,
Perfect.
and you can just add your name and where you're at, and if you want the information, we'll get it back to you.
Hi everyone. Thank you for being here. I don't have a formal survey, but I have a few questions as well. Who is familiar with offshore fish farming or open aquaculture? Fabulous. That's a great amount of people. And who is familiar with the Blue Revolution? Perfect. Fewer people. Who's familiar with the Green Revolution? Okay, some more people. Great. So basically what I'm going to do today is bring us all up to speed on what we're calling the Blue Revolution, which you probably do know what it is, even if you don't know it by name. Place that in the context of the Green Revolution that we all see the effects of every day. If you've ever seen an industrial farm or eaten food from any grocery store, you've been impacted. And then talk about how offshore aquaculture relates to all of that. So the Green Revolution started really with the introduction of GMO crops, specifically GMO wheat, and that kind of spurred, along with other technological advances in the agricultural industry, this really intensive form of industrial agriculture that resulted in really high yields at the expense of our land, our soil, our water health, our health, exactly, our air, everything is touched by it. And it also resulted in the consolidation of power into a few small, well, large, but small hands, large corporations, and land grabs. So the Blue Revolution then refers to the growth and intensification of aquaculture production that has started in the middle of the 20th century and goes on today, and has only been ramping up. So though it does focus particularly on aquaculture, we can think about it with things like the consolidation and privatization of marine resources and industrialized fishing. The factory trawling that was spoken about in the last presentation, for those of you who are there, is a great example of that. So the same issues that we see with industrial agriculture, we also see with industrial aquaculture. For example, the use of antibiotics. With the Green Revolution, livestock antibiotic and pesticide uses grew exponentially during the Green Revolution as confinement increased and diseases and parasites spread, leading to then antibiotic-resistant infections and pesticide-resistant parasites. In extreme cases, whole flocks, whole herds have to be culled, which is horrible for the farmer, horrible for the animals, horrible for everything. So now we're seeing this happen with fish farms. You know, as densities are increasing, the diseases and parasites such as sea lice are also increasing, leading to increased antibiotic and pesticide use. That is, these chemicals are applied directly into the ocean for open ocean aquaculture, which is crazy when you think about all of the money that is poured into reducing agricultural runoff and urban runoff. Like, we're just putting the chemicals right into the water. And so much like with our land, agriculture, and our livestock, in extreme cases, some of these, especially sea lice outbreaks, are so awful that the entire farm has to be culled. That's awful, like, that's terrible. You know, another part of the Green Revolution was these promises of feeding the world, right? Without GE wheat, how can we feed people in drought climates? And so that's the same blue washing or green washing or humanity washing that we're seeing with industrial offshore aquaculture, but it's just not true. There's actually a net protein loss when you go to offshore aquaculture because the fish that we're farming, particularly salmon, but all the fish that we're farming, it's carnivorous fish because that's what people like to eat, and it's those high value fish. So first of all, it's a high value fish, so it's not accessible to the people who are food insecure. But also, all of the places where we catch this foraged fish, especially in like West Africa, so Senegal, Ghana, where we're catching these foraged fish and processing them into fish meal and fish oil, they're experiencing increased levels of food insecurity so that we can farm these fish for US markets, for European markets. That's what's happening. It's also in those areas. I can share with anybody who'd like to see it. A great study just came out. It's leading to huge amounts of air pollution and water pollution in those areas where, in West Africa, where that fish meal and fish oil is being processed. So like the Green Revolution, the Blue Revolution also comes with great consolidation of power and wealth. You know, there's such a high barrier and cost of entry into this industry. It's not your mom and pop salmon farm out 3 miles offshore. It, you know, is super expensive to set up these huge net pens and super expensive to get out there and stock it and everything. So the only individuals can't afford to do that. It's huge corporations. And so the huge industry block, the huge lobbying firm, I think is what we can call it, the Stronger America Through Seafood, they're Stronger America Through Seafood. I don't know if that's real. Stronger America Through Seafood, SATS. They're this group that is pushing really heavily for offshore fish farming. And on their board, they have representatives from Cargill, Merck, Cisco, the James Beard Foundation, some big green environmental NGOs, so the Monterey Bay Aquarium, Environmental Defense Fund, World Wildlife Fund, and the Nature Conservancy. Which is surprising and disappointing, right? Because this is a really polluting industry. This is a really bad, the benthic zone underneath of these fish farms, due to all of the waste that these fish create, and due to all of the chemicals that are pumped in, are like dead zones underneath of them, and the impacts go for miles. So, why do we think that these environmental NGOs, these huge environmental NGOs, are supporting this? It's a way, they see it as a way to privatize the ocean and exclude fishermen. They see it as a way to shift away from treating the ocean as a commons, like Brad was just talking about, something that communities have innate, intimate, place-based relationships with. They want it to be something that we can own and manage by distant corporations, governments, and big NGOs, or often partnership between two or all three of those. And they see it as a way to transform food systems from community-rooted to top-down and corporate-controlled, as they've already done with land-based agriculture and the de-skilling through generations, the de-skilling of the consumer. So there are a couple ways that this is being promoted in the US right now. Right now, today, there are no offshore aquaculture facilities in federal waters, which is great. There are some in Maine, there used to be some in Washington, but after 2017, a statement where thousands upon thousands of Atlantic salmon escaped into the Salish Sea off of Lummi Island, Cypress Island. Atlantic salmon, are they native to the Pacific Ocean? No. So why are they there? Hillary Franz, the commissioner in Washington State, outlawed it in state waters, or put a ban on it. I think outlawed is probably not the proper term to use. And then there's a complete ban as well in Alaskan waters, because obviously Alaskans know fishing is important and this is a huge threat to native fish stocks. But it is being promoted. There is a huge push to establish offshore aquaculture facilities, open ocean aquaculture facilities in federal waters. In 2020, then President Donald Trump issued Executive Order 13921, which did two things. It empowered NOAA, which does not technically have the power to they don't have any power over aquaculture, but this gave it to them, to set up aquaculture opportunity areas, and the Army Corps of Engineers to give a nationwide permit in those aquaculture opportunity areas to basically fast track any development by cutting down dramatically on the number of permits needed. So far, they have been sited off of the Southern California Bight, two of which are in a known DDT dump site, an EPA Superfund site. So I don't know why you would want to eat fish that was farmed there. And as well, the Gulf of Mexico, which a couple of them are within the dead zone. So where nothing can live because the water is too full of nutrients, we want to farm fish. So that's cool. And then there are also a couple of bills that are introduced into Congress. The first being the Aqua Act, which has been introduced to Congress for many years, every year, that basically allows offshore fish farming to be established in federal waters without these aquaculture opportunity areas. It fails every year. We're hoping it'll fail every year into the future. And then the Seafood Act, which was recently introduced, that basically allows for offshore aquaculture sites to be established for research purposes. However, we know that This is a very well-established industry, especially in Europe. It started in Norway. We don't need to research this more. It's kind of just an excuse. Sorry, refer to my notes. For the aquaculture opportunity areas as well, there have been talks about siting them in Alaska. Those are just going to be for mariculture sites for now, but you never know what will happen tomorrow. The Caribbean and the rest of the West Coast. But so what else can we do? If we're not doing this, like if we're accepting that aquaculture can be part of our seafood system, what can we do instead of this industrial offshore aquaculture? We want to block this, but we also want to uplift our small and medium scale fishermen, and we want to uplift our small and medium scale, or really small scale, and culturally relevant, and aquaculture with values. So something that comes to mind for me is the Lokaia fish ponds in Hawaii that are being revitalized. They have been used for generations, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So that's a really good example of community-based aquaculture. It's ultimately about uplifting age-old ways of relating to the ocean as a blue commons, a common heritage to people around the world, a living entity that we have a reciprocal place-based tie with. Think about oceanhood, think about rights of nature. You know, we really want to drive home that scale matters. Who's doing the farming matters, what they're farming, how they're farming it, and where they're farming it. Like with the wind farms, like where those are sited, that matters. So the North American Marine Alliance coordinated a year-long inclusive study to gather input from different user groups of what aquaculture with values looks like. They came up with 8 main values. So the first being food, that aquaculture is essential to the overall seafood supply, and it's vital for healthy and culturally appropriate food systems. It has to be necessary as a source of food. If it's not necessary as a source of food, don't farm. Stewardship, a part of it has to be that it aims to protect and honor every watershed and ecosystem's intrinsic ecological value and environmental rhythms on land and at sea. It must be community-based. It must provide access to of equitable opportunities to a diverse range of people. It must include equitable supply chains, place-based knowledge. It must be a public resource, and it must be transparent and accountable.
Good
So-
luck on all
But yeah,
that. Good luck.
it's only 8 points.
Yeah.
Only 8 boxes to check. So what can you do? Well, you can join Don't Cage Our Oceans, you or your organization. If you're a fisherman, if you're just a person that wants to join, we would love to have you. We are a coalition of a very diverse group of people, from fishermen to ocean health experts, to chefs, to environmentalists, to everywhere, all over the board. And it's free, and we'd love to have you. You can talk to your policymakers about the threats of offshore fish farming. There are some NOAA public listening sections that I want to plug. They'll be taking regionally and nationally over the next month. So NOAA, of course, fails to distinguish between the myriad forms of aquaculture and conflates small-scale, community member-driven, owned, values-based forms of aquaculture with industrial-scale, open system, and I'm reading it. Polluting forms of finfish aquaculture that are owned by distant or foreign investors. And we drafted talking points for you to contribute comments if you're so inclined. So the West Coast sessions will be on March 1st, Alaska on March 7th, and nationally on March 8th. So if you'd like more information on that, I can send you some links to register, as well as the talking points that we've drafted, if that would be helpful. So that's all I have. If there are any questions? Yes?
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
First of all, what's your organization's position on land-based aquaculture, which is becoming more important?
Yeah.
It's not get all that, whatever. And then the second question is about importation of like Norwegian aquaculture fish. For instance, I go to Costco, that's what they're also selling Alaska wild fish, but they're also selling Norwegian Atlantic salmon that's obviously been farmed. Is there any government policy on that, or what kind of farming of the Norwegians doing is any different from what we do in areas of like BC, where they really messed them up with aquaculture in the sea?
Yeah, Norway's having huge issues. So Norway is really where this all started, and they're now having huge issues, and there's a huge push to limit the impact of these fish farms in the fjords. But so for the land-based aquaculture, we focus specifically on, very specific, blocking offshore aquaculture in federal waters. That being said, it's totally, to us, about scale. So from what we've seen, these huge industrial fish farms on land, they are bad for the coastal communities that depend on those small and local fisheries. They're bad for the environment. They have a lot of challenges on their own, and animal welfare challenges, if that is something that you value. So while it's not part of our positioning, we're not lobbying against it, we're not trying to get people to sign on to a letter for it, we are often critical of land-based aquaculture in the same way. The caveat to that would be truly recirculating farms that truly have like the plants, and so it's truly just one system. The question about imported seafood, though, what is our position on it, or what is?
Yeah, I mean, because they're using fish that have antibiotics loaded in, and then all that stuff.
Yeah, so we're against it. We really are interested in supporting our local fishermen. We're part of the local catch network. We're part of Slow Foods, like all these groups that do a really good job of promoting our local fishermen and fishing communities. Importing farmed fish from Norway, importing farmed shrimp from Ecuador, Thailand, wherever, insert country here, insert seafood here. What it does, what we've seen, what we've heard from our community partners is that it prices those producers out of the market with lower quality seafood. So it's bad for our economy, it's bad for our communities, yeah.
Nature concerns, you can't be ignorant of the harm that this is doing.
Yeah.
How do they justify it to their membership? I mean, I don't send any money to the nature conservancy anymore.
Yeah, it's a lot of blue washing, to be honest. They don't just, like they don't, I think they maybe see it as better than fishing.
Better than fishing?
Yeah. I don't agree with that, to be clear.
Because of the plastics in the netting.
And because of like bycatch, because of, plastics in the netting, because of
Commercial overfishing.
There's no
commercial
plastics
overfishing. Sorry?
No plastics in the aquaculture?
No, there certainly are.
Yeah, right.
But, and so there's that. I think, to be honest with you, these huge environmental NGOs do get money from corporations. They do. Of course. And so that does influence the information that they're sharing, and that does influence what they call environmentally friendly and what they don't. Which is a bummer, but how it goes, I suppose.
So I'm concerned about the welfare side of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a neuroscientist, and these little animals, if they're to the extent that you're dealing with highly migratory fish, like salmon and trout, they don't have much of a brain, but what they are built for, that you only move if you're motivated to move, and that's through dopamine, dopaminergic receptors, all this, they're built to move. So does anybody ever bring up the question of the immense amount of possible suffering that's going on when you put animals that are built to move thousands of miles may have almost no other motivation but that, to put them in these tiny little containers, as far, I mean, relative to the half an ocean that they can swim. Do you guys ever deal with that?
There are a lot of conversations about animal welfare, but I haven't heard it framed in the context of them being migratory species, which is really interesting to think about. And that's something I'm going to try down and research more. So I don't have an answer for you. It's not something that I've heard, but I think that it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you
what
could
you're
get a
saying
lot more
as that
support
aspect.
from a different group of people that may not be as concerned about the environment,
Of course.
but they are concerned to eat animals that are suffering. You know, you
Absolutely.
might get, that might be a
Oh,
different
for
way.
sure. And for sure, these animals are suffering. So, like, they're, even if it isn't, I mean, I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I think that that probably does cause anxiety and suffering for these animals. But, like, the amount of sea lice that comes out of these fish, like, sea lice is a normal part of fishing in this region. Like, there's sea lice out there. It's a parasite that's very common. But the amount of sea lice that is attacking these fish, and just, like, you can look up pictures, it's very sad, very disturbing. Like, just flesh missing, like, frankenfish practically. They're just, like, they have no energy to do anything but just kind of float around. So certainly these fish are suffering, and that is a conversation that is being had. I just haven't heard it framed in the context of migration. Yeah.
One of the biggest issues in fish farming, whether it's in federal waters or state waters or even on land, to me, if not the biggest issue, is what they're fed.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of removing a whole level of seafood from the ocean to feed some other fish seems like it's hard to ignore,
Absolutely.
even by environmental groups that are getting some motivations to look the other way.
Yeah.
What's the possibility, is there no possibility of feeding all these fish something like soy or whatever,
Oh.
and having them be attracted to it?
There sure is, and it's happening. And you know who's selling it and producing it?
Unilever.
Cargill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that certainly is happening. But to the animal welfare point, do we want fish to be eating what cows eat and chicken eat? Like,
Also,
are
soy
they
isn't
supposed-
that good for the environment.
Yeah, and soy's not that great for the environment. And then you look at like what that does to the nutritional quality of the fish. They're also being fed chicken in some cases. Yeah, so that's crazy. So, like, there's huge nutritional differences in farmed fish and wild fish, and that's totally diet.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Are you guys also, as big aquaculture and big mariculture, are you guys working on similar issues in the mariculture industry?
Mariculture, for us, is a very separate industry,
Okay.
primarily because it's not fed, and because it is like stagnant, and it doesn't have the same waste issues. And so we do have some members of our coalition that are seaweed farmers. They're not industrial seaweed farmers. Oh, perfect. So we tend to like mariculture, seaweed, and shellfish much more. But I know that there are criticisms of that kind of farming on an industrial scale, and questions especially about seaweed farming and like carbons. Like, yeah. So, any other questions? Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
It isn't very far to Astoria's bar, but a very long journey it can be. It can start at the mouth of a mighty blue river and end at the bottom of the sea. And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.